and this is Arcane Mark. Today's episode, our main topic is grappling. Grappling. Did that word send a chill down your spine? There's no combat maneuver more confusing or potentially disruptive to any combat, any situation, any game than grappling. Even with the basics down, there are a variety of edge cases that can result from different readings of the grapple rules. All of them fairly valid readings because the rules are all over the place. And I don't just mean that they're different, I mean sometimes they're in different places in the actual book. By the time we finish today, you'll have a pretty complete picture of how to use the Pathfinder grappling rules, including a resolution for numerous corner cases. Grapple corner cases is one of the first things I asked when I came in at Paizo, and Jason asked me, are there any rules questions that I've always kind of wanted to know, never been able to ask? And I asked all the grapple corner cases, and it turns out Jason had some pretty definitive answers with evidence to certain things that I just had no idea about, such as the undefined, I think it's called bound condition. We'll get to it when we get to the later part of grapple, but it's defined only in the helpless condition and is not defined anywhere else. So all sorts of things like that we're going to find out about today. So as usual, we're going to start by talking about some specific tips for grappling. We'll try to have an extended example for grappling, and then we will see what we have figured out. So, tip number 1, basic flow of grappling. I think a lot of you who are watching this video may understand the basic flow of grappling, but in order to figure out where the corner cases are, we should start with the basic flow. And if you're totally new to grappling, this video is also for you because we're going to start with the basic flow. So let's go to starting off. In tip number 2, we'll go to holding on. So starting off, let's start by examining a simple grapple initiation. No weird corner cases, no grab special ability, just the grapple initiation as it is written in the core rulebook. Like any of the standard action combat maneuvers, a grapple attempt begins when the aspiring grappler uses a standard action in an attempt to initiate a grapple. Without improved grapple, this provokes an attack of opportunity, and the damage from the attack of opportunity acts as a penalty to the combat maneuver check to grapple. The aspiring grappler rolls that combat maneuver check, never adding any weapon enhancement bonuses, including Amulet of Mighty Fists, and applying a -4 penalty unless the aspiring grappler has at least 2 free hands. If the check succeeds, the grapple has begun. Both the grappler and the victim gain the grapple condition. The grappler counts as being in control and receives a +5 circumstance bonus on combat maneuver checks to grapple the victim as long as she maintains that control. And if the victim was not adjacent to the grappler can move the victim to any adjacent square of the grappler's choice, even if it's a really weird square that is very far from the position where the grappled creature actually is starting. If there is no space, the grapple automatically fails. The grappled condition gives a -4 penalty to dexterity, -2 penalty on all attack rolls and combat maneuver checks except to grapple or escape the grapple, prevents the use of any ability that requires both hands, imposes a really hard DC 10 plus grappler's CMB plus spell level concentration check to cast a spell, prevents the grapplers from making attacks of opportunity, and prevents the grapplers from hiding from each other. Even becoming invisible only grants +2 CMD once they have a hold on you. They know where you are. If multiple people are involved in a grapple, additional creatures need to aid another, the grappler or the victim, whoever they want to help. You can't have 3 grapplers all grappling one victim separately, although it's possible that one grappler might be able to grapple multiple victims with the right abilities. Okay. Everyone cool with initiating a grapple in the basic condition? Alright, great. Nobody said anything, I'll assume that's true. Let's move on to holding on, the basic flow part 2. Now the grappler and the victim both have the grappled condition. On that first round, that's all the grappling on the grappler's part. A check to maintain the hold comes into play starting on the grappler's next turn by the definition of that check. Meanwhile, the victim has one chance to try to do something useful before that happens. While it's possible to attempt an escape artist or combat maneuver check to escape, or in the case of the combat maneuver check, you can optionally take control instead of escaping. Before long, most grappling monsters and PCs are tricked out to make that basically impossible. A potentially better possibility is to try to kill the grappler with a full attack, although you're minus one hand on that, so hopefully you were not holding a two-handed weapon. Either way, on the grappler's next turn, and every turn thereafter, the grappler receives both the privilege and the responsibility of succeeding on at least one grapple check if she wants to maintain the grapple. Since she's in control, she can always release her victim as a free action instead, though not in the middle of another action, such as between attacks during a full attack. If she wants to maintain, she can make a combat maneuver check as a standard action, sometimes as a move or swift action with the right feats, applying the +5 bonus for being in control of the grapple. With the feats that reduce the action to maintain a grapple, she might be able to make multiple attempts to maintain the grapple in the same turn. If so, she only needs to succeed at one of them to keep the grapple. Nonetheless, she may decide that she wants to maintain the grapple again even after succeeding in that round, since every successful attempt to maintain the grapple grants her a choice from 4 potential options. Option 1. She can move her victim and herself up to half her speed. If she moves her victim directly into a hazard, the victim receives a free attempt to escape at a +4 bonus. Second, she can inflict free damage with an unarmed strike, natural weapon, armor spikes, or a light or one-handed weapon. This does not require an attack roll. It just works. Third, she can pin her victim. She's likely to attempt this, as the pinned condition grants an additional -4 penalty to AC, prevents most actions except attempts to free itself, as well as some verbal and mental actions, but not spells with somatic components. Given that we said most grapplers can make it almost impossible for you to free yourself, and the best thing to do is try to kill the grappler, pinned is really bad for whoever gets pinned. Finally, if she has the target pinned, otherwise restrained, or unconscious, she can tie the target up, which, as it says in the description, works as a pin attempt, removes the grappler's need to maintain the hold, and requires a 20+ grappler's combat maneuver bonus to escape, with no automatic success on a natural 20, even though combat maneuver checks normally are. If she is the one grappling to pin the creature, the combat maneuver check takes a -10 penalty. This is as opposed to if the creature is otherwise restrained or unconscious. The sentence mentioning the -10 does not negate the first sentence and allow her to tie up a creature if it isn't pinned, otherwise restrained, or unconscious. Remember, if you're tied up, the strength check to break the ropes is probably actually easier than the checks to beat this super high DC on the combat maneuver check, but it really depends on who tied you up. Tying up does not make the tied up creature helpless because it says it works like a pin, not like the difficult to determine and undefined bound condition referenced in helpless. This is one of the ones I talked to Jason about bound and asked, is that what happens in when you get tied up? He pointed me to the text that says that it's a pin when you get tied up and said that bound refers to a more complete binding than the one from Grapple, for which there is no rule to applying it in combat, but you might be able to apply out of combat on someone who's already helpless to give yourself a conscious creature who can be coup de grace or sacrificed at a dark ritual or threatened or menaced in a cinematic way later on. It's something you do once you already have someone at your mercy in order to have someone who's tied up and ready to be killed in a later situation. Note that the only combat maneuver checks to maintain a grapple are the specific checks called out as checks to maintain a grapple. If she gets grapple attempts from other sources, like the grab ability that says it's only to initiate a grapple, or maybe the flurry of maneuvers ability for the monk archetype that grants that, those are not checks to maintain a grapple. They have to say they're checks to maintain a grapple. Now, improved grapple, greater grapple and rapid grappler that give you the move and swift action maintain a grapple do say that they are, and they are, checks to maintain a grapple. Alright, so we've done the basic flow of grappling, part 1 and part 2. We're going to move into more corner cases, but first, any questions on the basic flow? Alright? Seems legit. Let's do it. Let's talk about grab. First, the grab monster ability allows a free grapple check on every successful attack against a creature of the same size or smaller, using the generally natural attack that grants the grab ability. Possessing this ability at all also grants a +4 bonus on all grapple combat maneuver checks, which is highly powerful. Finally, the grappler can take a -20 to just use one part of its body to grapple and avoid gaining the grappled condition. For instance, it could grab a victim in its mouth and still have both hands free. That's basically how grab works. Constrict is an ability that often travels with grab. It allows a grappler to deal extra bludgeoning damage when the grappler succeeds at a grapple check. Since a grappler can't release the grapple as a free action in the middle of a full attack, this does not allow a creature like an octopus with grab and constrict on 8 attacks to attack, grab, constrict, release, 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 attack, grab, constrict on a full attack. It still provides a solid damage bonus, particularly for a grappler capable of maintaining a grapple 3 times per round, with greater grapple and rapid grappler, for instance. Alright, finally, while it may seem like a PC or NPC's fate is sealed as soon as they go up against a grappling foe, there are several techniques that can help protect against grapples. First off, you can make grappling you painful for the grappler, as killing the grappler first will remove the grapple. Spells like Fire Shield are a start. Kineticists with the fire element are particularly good at punishing those who grapple them with their kinetic defense. Freedom of movement is an excellent countermeasure for grappling as well, and it lasts a long time, so you're mostly safe from grapples if you have it. Although, in the example, we're going to find the main case where this is not true. The Liberation Domain's Freedom's Call aura is also incredibly helpful against grapplers, and Liberating Command can sometimes give a character with investment in escape artists a chance to escape a dedicated grappler, or a character with little investment a chance to escape a mediocre grappler. Alright, so we've gone over a lot of the basic and corner case situations in a grapple. Let's go into an extended example with the most complicated situation of them all. Ready? Here we go. So, the Tottori archetype is an embodiment of nearly every corner case you could possibly have with grappling, rolled up into one archetype. Let's use the Tottori as a case study to examine all the nuances with grappling. So, Toriko the Tottori has just purchased the Anaconda's Coil's magic belt, which grants her the constrict ability. Her archetype grants her several useful powers, including the ability to temporarily gain the grab ability for 1 round, costing 1 key point, or 2 if she wants to grab a larger foe. The ability to suppress freedom of movement and even dimensional anchor the foe in place for 1 round, also for 1 key point, this time as a swift action. Toriko is an incredibly dangerous opponent, but not quite as dangerous as she might be if we didn't consider some of the tips that we mentioned so far during the stream. Let's go through some common problem points using the tips. See if you can answer each question as I ask it. And I'm going to see what people think. So, we'll start off. Toriko would like to defeat one of the PCs without allowing that PC to have any chance to react. Due to having previously increased her reach, possibly by using a large person, she attempts to grapple the PC as a standard action, then use a move action to maintain the grapple to pin on the same round, and a swift action to maintain the grapple to tie up the PC. Now that the PC is tied up, the GM explains, Toriko's minion can coup de grace the PC before the PC gets a turn. Does this work? Why or why not? Does anyone have an opinion? Alright, the answer is it does not work for a couple of reasons. First, Toriko cannot make a maintain check until her next turn, because the checks to maintain say that they start on the turn after the grapple begins. so she couldn't have pinned and tied up the PC without the PC at least getting one turn to do something. Even if she did, based on the information I got from Jason about the bound condition, that the PC is not helpless when tied up. So they sure can't do much, but they're not helpless, so Toriko's minion cannot coup de grace the PC. Alright, second question. Toriko would like to instead, now that she knows she can't coup de grace the PC, perform a hasted two-weapon fighting full attack on the PC, activating her grab ability for 1 key point, then hitting the PC 5 times, grappling, releasing, and constricting every time for maximum damage. Does this work? Well, no, we know that it doesn't, because as we mentioned when we were talking about constrict, she cannot release the grapple until she finishes her full attack. It was also, we mentioned it based on holding on when the free action to release the grapple is allowed. Alright, next question. Since she can't just keep letting the PC go and constricting on every attack, Toriko now wants to make a full attack, and with grab, using the same strategy as before. On the first hit, she with grab, she's going to grapple the PC. With her second hit, she's going to maintain the grapple to pin the PC. On her third hit, she's going to tie the PC up. Does this work? The answer, no. As we know from the very end of our discussion about the basic flow of grappling and maintaining, then we know that the checks to grab are only able to initiate a grapple. They do not maintain the grapple or do any other grapple-related stuff. She could use those other attacks on other targets to grapple someone else, although she doesn't have both hands free at the point where she's grappled the first PC. But she might be able to get up to 2 PCs grappled and then try to maintain them later on. Alright, next one. When the GM built Toriko, GM added a permanent +4 bonus on all combat maneuver checks to grapple to Toriko's character sheet due to grab. Is this right? The answer, no. She only gains that bonus when she has the grab ability, and as I mentioned with the Toturi only gains the grab ability temporarily by spending key points. If she has enough key points, though, she will probably usually have this bonus when she needs it the most. Alright, next one. Toriko has eventually pinned that PC, just like she always wanted. And the PC has another friend, another PC, who's a Liberation Domain Cleric, who uses the Freedom's Call aura. Now, the GM says that nonetheless, the PC does not escape the grapple due to the Toturi's inescapable grasp ability. Is this correct? The answer, no. While inescapable grasp suppresses freedom of movement, specifically by name, Freedom's Call is a different ability that is not based on or mentions freedom of movement. So the PC is in the clear this time, mostly by a technicality. Alright, last one. Toriko has tied up the PC completely. PC's CMB is insufficient to beat Toriko's CMB +20, even though the PC has more than enough escape artists to escape. The GM claims that the PC cannot escape using escape artist, even though it would be easy, because the text says, to quote, if the DC to escape from the bindings is higher than 20 plus the target CMB, the target cannot escape from the bonds, even with the natural 20 on the check. Is this correct? And just like all the other ones, the answer is no. As per what we mentioned back in the basic flow of grappling, the purpose of that text that I just quoted is to remove the auto success on a natural 20 from combat maneuvers. It's not to render a character completely incapable of escaping by other means if they are bad at CMB but good at other means. They can still use dimensional magic or escape artist check or whatever. That only scopes to the combat maneuver check. They cannot escape from the bonds. That's what it means. Alright, so in our grapple topic today, we have introduced the troubles with grappling, split the basic flow of grapple and common corner cases into 5 shorter, easier to understand tips, clarified several gray areas about grappling that have made grappling particularly untenable under alternative interpretations, And finally, providing an example that used the 5 tips to answer some possible rules questions, examining some nuances with the tutorial archetype at the same time. So, having done that with grappling, I'm going to open up the floor to any additional questions you guys might have about grappling or not about grappling. Just anything. What's on your mind? What kind of rules questions would you like to hear answered? Give me a shout out. Alright. Alright, we've got a question, and the question is from Livgin. It says, 2-weapon fighting while grapple? Well, grapple is, the way that it is described is that basically one of your hands is tied up. I've seen some people try to kind of show what's going on with Pathfinder Grapple, since, of course, in some earlier editions, Grapple was a full body thing, and it's basically you've got one arm that is being grabbed onto, is being used in the grapple. You can otherwise move, and that's why you can cast spells with somatic components, which you did not used to be able to do in 3rd edition, but you can do in Pathfinder if you can make that ridiculous concentration check anyway. So 2-weapon fighting, you're going to have one of your hands tied up, and the other hand is going to be free to attack, but you're not necessarily going to be able to use a full 2-weapon fighting routine. Alright, any other questions? Grappling or non-grappling? If not, that's okay. I have some that are banked up from people who could not be here today, and we'll move them on. Oh, wait, we've got some here. So, alright, Linda asks, what about headbutts, kicks, etc.? Alright, so, if you have something like Flurry of Blows that says, hey, whatever, all these attacks can come from every part of your body, then you're fine. You could definitely do whatever you want. But if you're 2-weapon fighting with your 2 kukris, one of those kukris is locked up by the grapple. Alright, Tumdy-Dum asks, so, would a Kasatha be able to use 2-weapon fighting while grapple? And I'm gonna have to look at the grapple text a little more carefully again, but I think the answer is yes, and they would even probably be able to use a 2-handed weapon because their hand that is tied up, grappling is one of 4 of their hands. Let's see. So the free grapple check actually is required to be a light or 1-handed weapon. But yeah, if you're grappled, it says, instead of attempting to break or reverse the grapple, you can take any action that doesn't require 2 hands to perform, such as to cast a spell or to make an attack or full attack with 1 light or 1-handed weapon against any creature within your reach. So actually, very, very technically, the Kasatha is not in good shape because of the fact that it's written really humanoid biased. Problem is, most of the core rules are written hugely biased towards humanoids, with 2 arms and 2 legs, or people who look much like you and me. And so, the rules currently, even if you only have 1 hand, it doesn't say that that hand is tied up. Or if you have 0 hands, it says you could do something that takes 1 hand. So, you kind of have to figure out what you want to do with the Kasatha. I would say one of the hands is tied up, and similarly, if you only had 1 arm, that, well, you're in trouble when you're grappled because that arm is being used in the grapple. Though technically the grapple rules do not say that because they're written with a huge humanoid bias. We tried to pull some of that out in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, although just yesterday, I think Luis, who is a big wrestling fan himself, and is running Arcadian Wrestling Luchador at PaizoCon this year. But he told me that something that was in there with grappling was, once again, written assuming that you were more like a humanoid and not like a snake. So, it is what it is. It's a game written by humans, for humans, and sometimes when you try to write it so that it's open to non-humans, the wording is very, very awkward in order to cover that situation. Like some of the things I had to put in kineticist in case the kineticist was like some weird tentacle monster or didn't have any arms. Alright, any other questions about grappling or not grappling? If not, I will be happy to move on to some of our banked up questions. Alright, let's try a banked up question. This one is from Wraithstrike. Since there seem to be abilities that allow you to overcome obstacles and or difficult terrain, is it intended to be able to overcome them by jumping without a feat or class feature? Alright, so the problem that leads to Wraithstrike's question is that a lot of the skills in the core rulebook are not super well defined in terms of their action or in terms of exactly what's going on, and jump is one of them because it says action, well, it's done as part of another action. So this has led some people to posit that you can do something that looks like one of those badly coded old-time first-person shooters where you're just jumping constantly everywhere and you just look around and everybody's always jumping because they can go further that way. That is not the greatest, but technically there's no definition of what and where you're jumping in the action. It says, let me find the text here. Action none. An acrobatics check is made as part of another action or to react to a situation. So when I'm running this, the way I handle it is that yes, if you're moving and you want to do a running long jump, you can do a running long jump during movement. Otherwise, there's no way to do a running long jump. And if that running long jump is high enough and long enough that it gets you over the difficult terrain, then sure, you're over the difficult terrain. But you cannot just do a thing where you're doing like little rabbit hops over every square that you're passing by and claim that you're not handling the difficult terrain. And keep in mind that sometimes difficult terrain goes up above the ground. It depends on what it is. If it's just like loose rubble and like little pebbles on the ground, obviously if you can leap over that whole area, then you're okay. But if it's not, if it's vines that are thick and are going up to a certain height, you might have to jump pretty high. Alright, let's go back to another question from the stream from Livgit. Want to speak more on when maintain happens with greater grapple. I missed a bit of that section. Can you, while grappling, make an unrelated standard action and then maintain as a move? Alright, so we were mostly talking about the fact that you're grappling, as it says in maintaining a grapple, starting on the next turn after you have initiated the grapple. And we didn't so much talk about what would happen if someone wanted to do something other than grappling. We were only talking about all the grapples. So what it says in Greater Grapple is this. Once you have grappled a creature, maintaining the grapple is a move action. This allows you to make 2 grapple checks each round, but you're not required to make 2 checks. You only need to succeed at one of them to maintain the grapple. A lot of which I said sort of spread out in that section. What that means is you sure can do your other standard action just like you want. So you can grapple on the first round, then when you're on the second round to maintain, you could totally maintain as a move and make an unrelated standard action. You could try your luck at casting a spell, though the concentration check can be pretty vicious. But hey, you're the one who grappled them. They might have a really terrible combat maneuver bonus, and then, with a bad CMB, maybe the check to cast your spell is actually not too bad. So, with Greater Grapple, it just flat out turns it to a move action, and you can do whatever you want. The one that is a little bit different is Rapid Grappler, because Rapid Grappler can only be used after using a move action Greater Grapple. So you can't just swift action Rapid Grappler and then do like a full attack or a full round action. You do have to, at minimum, spend the move action to maintain. Rapid Grappler is only if you want to do a second maintain. Alright. So the next question is also from Livgin. Does maintain always happen at the start of a turn? So I'm going to make sure this is true, but I'm pretty sure the answer is no. Just basically, if you've ended your turn and you have failed to maintain the hold, then they are free at last. Let's see. Yes, you must continue to make a check each round to maintain the hold. That's what it says. So as long as you make a check each round to maintain the hold, then you've maintained it. But if you make it through your turn and you did not maintain the hold, then that's it. So you can choose to do it first. You can choose to do it last after you figure out how your non-maintenance action worked. And you really have that choice. But if it gets through the end of your turn and you decide not to maintain, or you've just failed every time, then they get free instantly. They don't have to escape artist. They don't pass go. They don't collect $200. Alright. Any other questions on the stream about grappling or non-grappling? Alright, there's a thanks for the concentration clarification on spell casting while being the grappler. The grab ability to avoid the grapple condition, does this only help against the dex penalty and the inability to make AOO? So, this is in reference to when we said you can take a minus 20 on your check to grapple if you have the grab ability to just sort of hold them in your mouth or something in some part of your body. So in that case, you don't gain the grapple condition. So this question was from Livgin again. No, it does not only apply to the penalties that you mentioned in the question, Livgin. You just flat out don't have the condition. Which means if you do want to be that person who spellcasts and doesn't have to worry about the concentration, you would be very happy to have them held in some other part of your body, although maybe not your mouth at that point, because it's hard to cast a spell with some kind of PC in your mouth. But if you have them held with a grab in, say, just your hand, and you're not grappled, then you don't have the grapple condition, so you don't have to worry about anything that comes with the grapple condition. Alright. So I'm going to leave you guys time to come up with more of your own questions, and I'll answer another question from the people at home. So we have one from Jacob, also known as Milo V3. It says, does using Aether Blades and Aether Fists destroy your weapon or heavily damage yourself? The Aether Blast of the Kineticist normally works by throwing an unattended object, and this damages the thrown object. Some have said that since they are Aether Blast, they innately damage the thing because it's a trait of Aether Blasts. Others have said that since Kinetic Blade and Kinetic Fist infusions don't use a thrown object as their medium, and it doesn't specify like foe throw that it damages the medium, that it wouldn't take damage. Alright, so it's not an inherent trait of all Aether Blasts that they damage an object, because Force Blast or blasts that are not telekinetic blast might do something different. However, when it comes to telekinetic blast, it does say it damages the object that's thrown. The question is, when you apply a form infusion and you're no longer throwing, what's the deal? Well, Kinetic Fist is putting it onto your body. There's no object involved, and typically when something damages either an object or the creature, like say there's certain abilities that say, hey, I'm covered in acid slime, I'll damage your weapon if you hit me with that, or you if you attack with an unarmed attack. Since it doesn't say that it damages you, you're definitely, in my eyes, in the clear when you use Kinetic Fist. With Kinetic Blade, the weapon that you were smacking with kind of does probably fall apart, since if you try to apply the form infusion as closely as possible, the object that you are using in melee is pretty similar to the object thrown. Let's look here on the stream for a moment at the telekinetic only specifications in Kinetic Blade, because they are there. It says in Kinetic Blade, The object held by a telekineticist for this form of fusion doesn't prevent her from using gather power. If you're a telekineticist, you instead transfer the power of your kinetic blast to any object held in one hand. And it says, even if a telekineticist uses his power on a magic weapon or other unusual object, the attack doesn't use any of the magic weapon's bonuses or effects and simply deals the telekineticist blast damage. Alright, so those are everything about the telekineticist. It probably does apply, but honestly, it's not super overpowered to let the object survive at least until the end of the full attack, unless the telekineticist has figured out some way to get around those clauses that we said there and do something sort of extra broken with a certain object. They're mostly probably, if they want to reuse an object instead of breaking objects, want to do it just for style and have the thing that they always attack with be, say, like a sports bat that to them is a sword or something like that. So just for style, I see no reason that you would have to prevent people from just keeping the same item unless they're abusing it somehow, which I can't really see a way to do. And certainly it'd be nice to at least allow the weapon to survive through a full attack, because otherwise, what are they doing with the rest of the attacks? So that is my answer to that question for now. Let's see, we've got another question here. Rake from Livgin again. Are the attacks from Rake free actions? On round 2 of grappling, can they happen before check to maintain? So, this is a good question. Rake, as many of you guys will remember Rake as that crazy thing that the lion does to me when it pounces, that it can't do on a normal full attack. But Rake does have a lesser used situation, which is vastly more confusing than on the pounce. Because it's pretty clear on the pounce that it just makes all the attacks in the Rake. But the part that Livgin is referencing is, in addition to the options available to all grapplers, a monster with the Rake ability gains 2 free claw attacks that it can use only against a grappled foe. The bonus and damage caused by these attacks are included in the creature's description. A monster with the Rake ability must begin its turn already grappling to use its Rake. It can't begin a grapple and Rake in the same turn. So, that's a fun thing. In fact, that's the only real definition of Rake. Pounce has its own definition that says, hey, you get all of the Rakes also in Pounce. The other funny thing about Rake is it says 2 claws in the body of Rake, but sometimes it's not 2 claws. Anyway, this is pretty much does not tell you at all how to apply it. It just says it is 2 free claw attacks it can use only against a grappled foe if it starts its turn already grappling. I have typically rolled it as free actions, and you can use them whenever you want, which does mean you could do a Rake and then decide not to maintain the grapple and then do something horrible to that person. But I'm going to fully admit that it completely doesn't specify anything about these supposed free claw attacks. They definitely aren't an extra thing you can do while maintaining, because they say they're free. And so you wouldn't have to do them instead of with a grapple action instead of moving or pinning or damaging. They are free extra attacks that you're gonna have to stick in somehow, and that's how I stick them in anyway, is right at the beginning or wherever they want to make them during that turn. Alright, so let's see. Do we have any other questions? Lots of good grapple questions, Livgin. If not, then I'll move on to one more question from the non-viewing audience. It says, also from Wraith Strike, if you're a druid and you shape change into a creature that has an ability with a save DC such as poison, how do you figure out the DC when you're wild shaped into that form? This is a fairly tricky one. That's because there are 2 competing bits of text that each do not exactly apply directly, but that really kind of might want to apply directly. One of them is that poisons are going to typically have a DC of 10 plus half your level plus your Constitution modifier. The other is that spells have a DC of your spell DC, basically, for that spell. So, this would be an open and shut case if Pathfinder First Edition didn't have supernatural and spell-like and extraordinary and spells, and they were all so different in ways that were hard to explain. And that's because of the fact that if you look at the polymorph sub-school in this magic chapter, let me grab that up. Although it's hard to grab it up via search due to the fact that there are a lot of spells that have the word polymorph in their name that want to be found before polymorph. Alright, let me grab it. Here we go. So, the polymorph spell transforms your physical body. Gives you a bunch of stuff. The DC for abilities when you use a polymorph spell equals your DC for the polymorph spell used to change you into that form. So if this was actually beast shape, then we're fine. If it was a spell-like ability that granted beast shape, then we're probably also fine. But it's neither of those two things. And it's not clear that we're fine with the spell-like ability, but you probably are. It is a supernatural ability that sort of works like beast shape, but it's a supernatural ability, which is not even a spell-like ability. So, it mostly says it functions like beast shape, except as noted here. On the other hand, that means the spell itself beast shape, but doesn't say if it functions like a spell, for instance. For instance, since it's a supernatural ability, you probably can't dispel magic, wild shape, either, since dispel magic works on a spell, or other things that are particularly only active when it's happening to a spell. And therefore, since we're not talking about beast shape, and we're talking about a rule that applies to spells, you guys can see where it gets very complicated. Essentially, there's no rules answer that is definitely right about how to apply one of those two things. So you're sort of just going to have to pick the one that feels best. If you pick the spell DC, that's much more similar to how beast shape actually works. If you pick the Constitution-based DC, that's more similar to how a regular poison works if you think that the feel of wild shape is more like being the animal or creature. And really, I'm not gonna fault you for picking either of those two. In reality, basically all those polymorph spells in Pathfinder First Edition, especially if you pick a poison or breath weapon or something that was really vague and undefined, can get really broken, because a lot of the abilities on that list, yeah, they're fine when you get them from beast shape. But poison could be anything from like 1d2 dex damage to 50d6 damage, and also 12 con drain or something like that. And the ability to get that right away is already a problem, meaning that no matter what you pick, you might have an issue. So you should figure it out together with your group. Possibly might want to pick the one that's lower if your group doesn't like having enemy druids do ridiculous poisons to them. Alright, let's see. The next question here is from Livgin. It says, for example, the lion starts the round grappling, kills the target with rakes, then pounces a new target. Alright, so if the lion starts the ground grappling, it makes the 2 free attacks with the rakes and kills the target. It could release the dead body as a free action, and then pounce a new target for 2 more rakes. I can't see how this doesn't work by at least the very vague definition of rake that's in the book, because it says it's free, and best I can tell that means it's a free action. But certainly, it's pretty ambiguous. But yeah, I think that works. You just kill them with rakes, let them go, pounce a new target. Next question from Livgin. Is retrieving rope assumed part of the maintain check to tie up, or is it a separate action needed to retrieve it? Plus, is there a one-hand grappling penalty while tying up? So that is a good question that is, once again, not super mentioned in Grapple. Let me read everything that the rules have about actual tying someone up. So, tie up. If you have your target pinned, otherwise restrained, or unconscious, you can use the rope to tie him up. This works like a pin, but the DC to escape the bonds is equal to the DC I said earlier in this stream. The ropes do not need to make a check to maintain the pin. If you're grappling, you can attempt to tie up with a -10. Alright. If the DC to escape from these bindings is higher than 20, yeah, that's the one we talked about before. That's all it says. So, it does not say anything about the fact that it gives you a free chance to pull out the rope. And it doesn't say anything about removing the one-handed penalty. So, it seems like in most cases you would need to pull out the rope and then make the check with the one-handed penalty. There are some schools of like grappling styles that remove the one-handed penalty, which could be useful for tying someone up. But otherwise, the rules at least do not give you any leeway on that. Alright, let's see. The next question is also from DM Livgin. The question is, armor spikes, question mark. My answer is, armor spikes. Yes. Okay. Let's see if we have any other questions queued up from our outside audience. No, although I'll let Livgin possibly clarify the question of armor spikes question mark to see if there's something else to it. Alright. So, in that case, we have answered the questions about grappling today. And for our YouTubers, that'll be it. Take care,